Germany is known for being good in industrial things. We know that. Wherever you go in the world, you can find anywhere a machine which was exported there 80 years ago, still running 24/7. We know that Germany is good for that. That was in the good old analog days. And these days still exist, but there's a new thing coming up, which is, as you all know, digital. And as you know, if you're the front runner, it's great, it's nice, it's cozy. And you know, the front runners have sometimes a little, let's say a little difficulty staying the front runner. That's what life is all about, that's what competition is all about. And that's why in Germany, we are not that bad in being digital, but we don't talk about it that often. And the next panel will be about the enabling things of digitization. That means infrastructure, investment. And we do have on this very panel guys who know all the stuff because they work it, they do it. They are in companies who are actually doing a great job with it. And that will be our topic of the next panel. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud that we do have a power panel. And please give them a very nice GITEX Explode. Please welcome Alexander Gerfer, CTO of Würth Elektronik, eiSos. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alexander. Yes, Alexander, come on up stage. We do have Antonio Krüger. He is the president of German Research Center for AI. Please welcome Jan-Peter Feidner, managing director of Equinix. It's a German energy startup. And ladies and gentlemen, yeah, now we got the music. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Ludwig von Reiche, managing director of NVIDIA. And I have the privilege to host this very, very nice panel of so many beautiful people with big brains, and that is good. Let's start with infrastructure. As AI has become hardware intensive, how is Europe approaching the development of AI-specific hardware and digital infrastructure? How do we do that? Who wants to start?
You have the infrastructure.
I was just going to say, if we start with the infrastructure or the hardware, little correction, so Equinix not so startup anymore after 25 years of being a global data center provider. The digital infrastructure is, I think, the key thing to put AI into Europe, and it is very dispersed. We heard it earlier on the stage today, how countries do it. There is a European wish to approach it together, but at the moment you have countries spearheading, like the French, for example. You see announcements coming up every week. I love that the German government is looking for that. And we just heard on the speech before that it will be built out, the gigafactory in Germany. The key thing for that is that we need to realize whatever's in a data center building, the infrastructure needs power. So building a building is nice, but then we cannot power the servers. So we need classical power infrastructure as well.
Well, I would go one step further and say infrastructure is only one thing. What is important is an ecosystem, a community that builds the skills to actually make meaningful use of all this infrastructure. And some software, and we'll come to that, I guess. But the one example that is going up, that we see going up, is in the city of Heilbronn these days, with an entire campus built around the future of AI.
Yeah, and I think the good news is actually that by the beginning of this year, I have the feeling that Europe understood actually that a particular effort has to be made to actually catch up also. Yeah? And with the AI Action Summit in Paris, Minister Chapas, the French digital minister, mentioned this. Macron has gave a very strong impulse, I think, into the AI community and also into the politics, yeah, to build up this infrastructure. And together with kind of global political developments, I think also the issue of technology and sovereignty is also a very important issue. So this is definitely something we have to do.
Yes, as infrastructure for us, we do, as Würth Elektronik, we do electronic components, and we do them supporting NVIDIA. Otherwise, the chips would not work of NVIDIA without the surrounding components. And it's all about what we see in our supporting function here. It's all about efficiency. So yes, we need the computing power, but what we use on energy we should use with the most efficiency, so less heat to be created, get the most out of the power you consume, and that's what we really try to do in collaboration with the IC manufacturers like NVIDIA, where we say we make the best physical external components for this power delivery. You have to understand now such a chip, when you look into your smartphone, there's a battery inside, 3.6 volt, or if you look now on the battery you take into your other devices, 1.5 volts. Such chips run with less than the battery power nowadays, 0.9 volt. They need now super high currents into the chip, and that's where we had a lot of challenge how to make and bring this power into the chip, and in the same time not to overheat the whole system. Heating is every time a bad sign for not being efficient, so everything what gets hot is not efficient. So we as a component manufacturer are here as a supporting function for the IC houses to say how can we make the systems more effective and more efficiently working, so that the limited power we have sometimes in the regions or as resources are not over exhausted, so to say.
But if we talk about energy and infrastructure, you know, there's a lot of coming. If we look to the future, let's be honest, guys, are we prepared?
No.
For the energy or for the future?
Both.
Well, if we look at energy, and that's across Europe, that's not a German. When we say we, often us as in Germany, but it's a European thing, right? We haven't built out our power grids for decades. Closer?
Yeah.
We haven't built out power grids for decades. So we're not prepared, and it takes time. And whatever we do today, we heard it in 15 years, we might have AI maximum that is more intelligent than us. So the speed that the technology moves is much faster than classical infrastructure moved in the past. So we have to change our thinking. And I think we have to be ready, so we will be ready, because otherwise we miss the train that is going. But people need to realize of how much we need to speed up to get there. We can, but we have to.
Yeah, and AI will be an important part of the equation, actually. Yeah, so this is something to keep in mind. Actually, if we look at the power grids, you know, the transformations that we are undergoing at the moment is enormous, and without actually intelligent ways to balance the load, to forecast the loads, and so on, and to quickly switch loads. This will be only possible with AI, actually, and this will be a very important part of the whole thing.
All right.
So if I may, I think there are three dimensions. One, Antonio just mentioned, namely that AI can help distribute energy much more efficiently. It can help manage loads. Already, consumers in Germany have the option now to have a flexible load system in their houses and to more efficiently use the system. Certainly, that's an important aspect for commercial users. The second one is how we generate the energy and where we locate the AI factories. And there we have some flexibility as long as the communication network is also geared in the same vein. So,
Is it geared?
Well, it's getting there. But if we were, for instance, to decide that energy is the most efficient and cheapest close to the North Sea, which is pretty much logical, then we should focus on building the communication networks in that direction as well.
So to give an idea, again, when we, as an industry partner, work here, there's just a discussion running, how do we run the grids itself? Is it still AC, also alternating currents as we have today, or do we run them in a DC net now, where we go directly in high voltage supply in the factories? Why do we discuss this? Because when we do it, it's immediately resource saving. So it means my cabling, my copper, even copper is now a limited resource worldwide, is going less in usage, and I can make easier and more efficient power supplies. And when we talk about the saving would be 1% of 6.4 terawatt, what we expect then in a running part of data center usage. 1% saving energy, 6.7 terawatt, 2040 in this range, or 2030, would mean already 2 million households more could get powered. So in 3% you can see 6 million people more. That's why even the infrastructure discussion must be done in, do we run DC nets, which we have already from the supply from sea to land, even in the factories, even in the data centers. A hot topic of discussion right now in the industry, also with us, but needs, again, new designs and even agencies going open in the discussion because new safety measures come into the game. But for energy saving, we have to switch, that's clear. We have to go faster to make it happen, and now, because we have a limit of power we can generate. And that's coming in 2040, we outrage these limits of power resources we have.
Okay, so if I get it right, I mean, our topic is how is AI redefining global competitiveness of Europe? So we do not have a problem in knowing things. Do we have a problem of executing things?
Well, I think we got to change a bit our mind to answer that one. It's what we just discussed is there will be data centers, AI gigafactories at different places. In the past, they followed connectivity. Now they follow power. So we find new spots. We found where ecosystems are. We found where science is. We have to change the approach to resolve the problems that we have. We can go classical and think in a new world. Classical approaches solve the problems. So if we change our mindset, we will find solutions. Maybe AI helps us to find the solutions, actually. So that changes our approach on thinking. But it's something we shouldn't ignore. We cannot stand on stage and say we build gigafactories across all of Europe, everywhere, in the next 24 months. That's simply impossible. That's old-fashioned thinking. We build a building and servers in it. Think different.
Do we do new fashion thinking? Does the new fashion thinking exists in the people who are calling the shots? Ludwig?
Well, I think we saw an element of that in Thomas's speech 15 minutes ago. That's sort of pointed toward a new kind of thinking at the governmental level. But coming back to your original question, do we know how to take all the know-how and implement it? Well, the German Center for Artificial Intelligence is, 36 years old? It's been around for a while. It has, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part of its lifespan, been a very good academic institution where research was undertaken. Have we been as good to take that research and bring it out and implement it in commercially useful solutions? I'm not so sure. And that's where a startup community has already taken us a good step forward. But we're far away from the gold standard of startups collaborating with research and so on.
Yeah, I basically agree. I think the main issue to understand is that in Europe we have a different way to innovate so far. We have a long tradition, actually, especially in Germany, engineering tradition, and innovation happened behind closed doors often. We have all these little hidden champions, and they often don't even file patents, because this is kind of exposing. And
that's weird.
Yeah, but patents also means that it can be copied. And then you need to sue somebody who copies actually your patents,
Okay.
So you lose something, There is an advantage to do this behind closed door. The main problem is that this is pretty slow. Yeah. And in particular, in the whole context of AI, you need an open innovation culture that is much more prominent in the US, and that, of course, also in the US and other parts of the world, you have the whole financing ecosystem around that allows the scaling. We heard this also this morning and so on. So we need to adapt actually the way how we innovate. We started to do this. I don't think we need to replace it, by a completely
reforming.
But reform it, exactly.
Okay.
I agree to disagree, like the Americans say.
Good.
So
let's argue.
As we do it since years now. We use already AI in different manners and things. So the first question is we make the most hated components for all electrical engineers outside world, inductors and magnetics. They don't like them. A lot of black magic in behind. It's not well explained in the textbooks. And we get so many questions. So we said, okay, let's use this, the need of the customer, enable them to make better designs. When we do the right measurements, we created thousands of measurements, and then we fed a system of really multidimensional matrices, and that solve for best. You call it nowadays digital twin simulation model. It's now in a tool called RedExpert. So the users really get the answers they need immediately, right away, the digital twin working. The second problem we have, the engineers' number go down and down. We have not the time to educate as we had the time before. When I started my engineering studies, I had time to go 6 years, 7 years. We don't have the time. We need now expert knowledge transferred into an AI system. In this collaboration with the AI system, get better knowledge, get better research. My vision like this, when I come back to my components, is the basic question is how would AI design my component, my magnetics, if it would not be limited by a purchaser, don't want to pay for it, and so on. How would Mother Nature create this design? A leaf, look into a leaf, how a leaf looks like, it's not full material. How would this system do it then for me? Is it manufacturable? A different story. But we would give this question into a research system and then look for what I envision is the kind of the sweet spot material, which when we do it in the normal approach of research, it takes us too long. These systems of AI can do it in multi-dimension things, and we can look for the best spots and say, and here we go more into the research. This could be a good approach to go there and make better designs, better electronics, long-lasting, long-lifetime electronics. That's how we work on it and do it.
All right, got it. Our umbrella topic is how is AI redefining Europe's global competitiveness? And there's one issue called trustworthy AI. It's often mentioned as the strength of Europe. Trustworthy AI. How can that be leveraged to enhance global competitiveness?
Well, we all depend that the technology and the applications using AI are accepted by the users, are trusted by the users. So it is an obligation on anyone using the technology and taking it to market to ensure that it is trustworthy. For instance, at NVIDIA, we have an entire library of products that allows for the implementation of trustworthy solutions on our platform. And we encourage and to the extent possible enforce the use of these technologies. Of course, at the end of the day, we don't build all the applications, but this is where I think a large part of the responsibility is on the users, and we see that in the discussions we have with our customers, that they take that very seriously. Now, there will always be nefarious actors, but that's a different question in a way that we also can debate, but that would probably be a different session, how that is best done.
Yeah.
But there are tools, and they should be used.
Can I add, we had it on the stage before where it was said there's electronic applications of the German government, but the user experience it sucks. Nobody uses it, even though it's there. It's the same with those applications. So we can design the best stuff in Europe, but we need to design what people want actually. And we have, if you look at public cloud, it's the same, right? There's multiple public clouds, which are European sovereign, even country sovereign, but the big players, the global players, they win the game because they have a much easier usability. So if Europe wants to go there, and we can have the infrastructure, we can have it all in Europe in our boundaries under our control, but it needs to be something that people, you said, and companies want, and that brings the adoption of stuff.
All right, that means marketing or UI, user interface and stuff like that. We should focus more on that.
Well, not always the best product wins. It's the product that's the easiest to use that wins.
Of course, it's also the price. We don't have to forget about that. And the question is how much, because the European technology providers, of course, are more expensive, than the big tech companies from the US. But on the other hand, if we look at, and I mentioned this earlier, the issue of technological sovereignty, this is getting more and more important also for companies. If you cannot be sure that your infrastructure will be available in 3 or 4 months, this is an issue. It's not just there is a reason why we spend billions actually on our own satellite navigation system, Galileo, And I think we should do exactly the same actually for an infrastructure, an AI infrastructure. I think this is important. We need to be able to rely on it, regardless who's actually elected somewhere else in the world. I think this is really important. And then, of course, this stacks. This stacks up to software, so to more complex systems. If you take, for example, a high-tech product, a large passenger plane, you know, people enter the plane and they use the plane. They have no real idea. They have a rough idea how this is working, you know, but they have no real deep technological idea. But they trust the technology.
Yeah.
And we have means in place. If something goes wrong, we can inspect the whole system and learn from failure. I think this is also very important, yeah? And it's part of the trust that's needed.
Ludwig, you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you. And in that context, I would beg to disagree with what you said earlier to some
Good.
extent. Namely, you referred to the Gigafactory project of the EU. Yes, that is a very strategic, long-running activity. We don't have to wait for that. And perhaps Gigafactory, I'll scale down a little bit and call it AI Factory. They can come in different forms and sizes, and they don't take years to implement if some fundamental decisions are made. And I think this is right now also a call to government or to public actors to lay the groundwork, to initiate such projects. Heilbronn is one example, but there are others. Jülich has a large AI factory that could be put to more uses, and there will be more. So it can be done. I sense a political will, as Thomas said earlier. So I hope we can get going.
I wouldn't even disagree, by the way, what you just said. And I combine what you two said. We need to pre-invest. We need to assume what will happen as Europe and not wait for it to happen, and then we're too late to build it. So absolutely with you. Not waiting for politics, not waiting for products, but assume what will happen, invest, build it, and startups can scale. We see a lot of startups that are going out of Europe at the moment because the capacity is not there. So we're losing European startups. They're deploying globally because they have what they need.
We don't want to talk politics on the stage, but you know, let's say things are changing. You know, things are changing. Things are not as cozy as they used to be. You know, that we should just use things and just happen, like tap water just happened. We just had it all, the new future stuff, new digital stuff. That is about to change. I think it's a good that is changing. And we in Europe, we are heavily dependent on a good and great supply chain. And it kind of was rocked during Corona, we all know that. It might be rocked again. Could AI help having a more resilient supply chain, living better with all the changing, let's say with the changing atmosphere, let's say like that?
Supply chain is a big task. We are so multinational in production and supplying goods that it is to say everything is back to only one continent, it's not to reach. The thing is, for us, do understand when is which demand really needed and created, and by so have a better planning and don't overproduce, produce the things when we need them to the amount we need them. That saves also a lot of resources, and there AI again can help for make these things better happening. But we say now supply chains come all back to Europe. And are they needed? I would say no, it's not needed. We have to be, as we were before, more open in the supply chain and see how the relationships are really.
Maybe let me rephrase it. How could they become more resilient? You know, resilience is the thing, I think, now, because things are changing. The wind is changing. The wind is blowing in our face.
I think it's in most of the companies' own interest, actually, to not to have actually a network of suppliers on which they can rely, and then eventually have AI help them to assess the risks that are attached to each of the suppliers. And there are already companies that offer such services, you know, depending, of course, on political situation, on region, geographical risks, and so on. And so that then very quickly, actually, suppliers can be changed, and supply chains can be switched, you know. And I think this makes many kind of transactions in an economy much more reliable and secure.
I agree. I mean, when things have happened a few months back, I remember the whole supply chain knocked our door and said, we have alternatives, don't worry. We planned in advance. So and they use stuff like that as well. So they also have sub-suppliers and sub-suppliers. So technology will help and also find new spots, and people will merge by that.
Coming back to Europeans' competitiveness, I mean, let's talk about partnerships, public and private. I mean, how can they better work together to be more effectively to scale AI innovation in Europe? Because we're always saying, yeah, it's happening, it's going on, we sense things, but is it really happening? How can we become better in terms of partnership?
Also we run our own program in AI and startup support. So we give challenges out and say this is where we need help from startups. We will even come out with an own campaign next year, a bit in a bigger approach. And of what we have seen just yesterday, we talked to a startup which is exactly looking at this research of new materials using AI here in Berlin, by the way.
Good.
Very funny, and until yesterday I didn't know. So that's why we say it's very important to understand the startup landscape, what is around here, and make it more open and interesting for startups to contact the industry and say, that's what we have. Are you interested? And then to learn from them what's really already possible on the way. And what I said in my way are to these sweet spot optimized materials. And that's what we learned just yesterday evening in a meeting, and said there is already one of these startups. And AI really helps now to go and make faster results and changes and things happening now. And that's a good combination. But yes, industry should collaborate with universities, industry cross-ref, so to say, also across the industries itself. And then Europe has a really good chance to have good solutions fast for the market. We should not fear and not to be so anxious about what could AI be doing. Will it kill us one day? No, it's first of all, how can AI help us to go better, faster, to solutions more efficient and energy and resources saving.
Ludwig?
Well, one element we haven't touched on here, but that was done earlier this morning, and I was really heartened by the comments of the gentleman from the EU, speaking on behalf of the EU Commissioner, about the new funding of scale-up companies. This has been the most critical lacking piece in Europe, and certainly in Germany in the last 15, 20 years. We've been talking about startups, but when they came to the point where they needed not 10 million, but 50 or 100 million investment, many of them were lost to other markets where the capital was more easily available. And this will be some tough nut to crack for the finance minister in this country, because there are some rules preventing large banks and insurance companies to invest in this asset class. We need to change that. Has nothing directly to do with AI, but since so much AI development is driven by startups that are driven out of Europe when it comes to scaling up often, it's something we really need to look at.
Good point. I mean, everybody knows Shopify, and most people don't know that this guy is a German fellow who just, I don't know, ran off to Canada first, and nobody knows. If he would have stayed in, let's say, Hamburg, we would love it, or maybe in Berlin. Good point. Thank you.
For the startups, I think you're spot on. I would extend it one step. When large companies say we need government support, we want to talk with companies, often politics step back and like, oh, we don't have money for you. But those companies not often ask for money. Nobody says no to subsidies, but it's more like making things easier, making permits easier, making availabilities easier, linking stakeholders. That's stuff where politics can help the industry get faster progress in, because so far the industry itself is managing all stakeholders, but a helping hand and not a financial, just a simply helping.
Is that a German problem or is it more a European
problem?
It's a
European challenge, and I would say particularly in Germany, because some other countries have stepped up. Spain and France, I want to mention very positively, but it's overall in Europe a thing that government is often like, solve it, we don't have money for you, but that's not the ask. The ask is give us a helping hand to meet stakeholders.
So I believe, of course, governmental funds are necessary for research and advancing AI in terms of research. But what especially the German government, I believe, will also now change is that the government is creating a demand also that AI startups can basically fulfill and offer. So similar to companies that started to accept startups as a liable business partner, this is actually, I know that many companies do this. There are still many companies that won't do it. There's a long regulation list that basically rules out all startups actually from competing and offering something to companies. And the same accounts actually for government and for administration. I think we could be also in terms of the digitization in Germany, we could be much faster if startups could contribute directly actually to services and so on.
Ludwig?
And I think I was first a little baffled when I heard about the new digital ministry, that it had in its name state modernization.
Yeah.
I have changed my mind, because state modernization means that the government will need at least one AI factory of its own in order to implement what it wants to do. And it can learn in the process.
Okay, let's have a look beyond the pond. I mean, Joe Biden did a lot of laws like the CHIPS Act and stuff like that. Are you guys jealous of that we don't have something like that?
It's difficult to be jealous in a way because...
Let's say envious.
Of course, it would be great to have something like this, we have other great things, I would argue, So let's better concentrate on what we have and where we are strong, actually.
But let's talk what we need.
Yeah.
So are you jealous?
No, it's always easier if you have that, right? But I'm with you. It's like not worrying about what we don't have, using what we have and advancing on what we need. I don't think we will fail because we don't have that support, but there will be others. It will happen.
Okay, final question. Europe, digital sovereignty, big issue. Are you optimistic that we are going there? Let's start with you. You're an NVIDIA guy, so you know better than all. Ludwig, tell me.
I'm not so sure about that. I'm realistic, and I am realistically assessing that we will go there, that we must go to a greater degree of sovereignty. And this can be an important piece. AI and AI factories, ultimately, where this is operating, are very important components of that.
It depends how you read sovereignty. There's two camps. It means either more independence and more alternatives so we can use what we have, or it means locking our digital borders and making something for ourselves in Europe and we're not letting anybody in or out. And that will not work just simply because you need exchange in the world. That's how the world is. So people read that differently. I like the alternative version of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think... and I'm also optimistic, that people understood that this is necessary, that a very strong monolateral dependence is not a good thing, But on the other hand, we have to also accept, and it's a good thing that the global world is connected, that we have the possibility, in particular in AI, all kind of, there are many AI startups already that have that are distributed over the world, that have here and there developers and so on. So I'm optimistic. 100% sovereignty and independency does not exist. But I think we should have somehow a stable ground, on which we can build. This is
Alexander?
Yeah, in a certain degree, yes, we need some kind of, in the basic research, eventually we have a bit more own works and a bit more in a secure data room, but later when it comes to product and scalability and mass production and global markets, we have to be open, that's clear, and share knowledge and collaborate instead of sitting in your home and lock the doors and think you're still independent. That doesn't work in this world.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. That was our panel about innovation, infrastructure, and trade, how AI is redefining Europe's global competitiveness. Well, thank you very much for Alexander Gerfer, CTO of Würth Electronics, Antonio Krüger, President of German Research Center for AI, Jens-Peter Feidner, Managing Director of Equinix, and of course, Ludwig von Reiche, Managing Director for NVIDIA. Thank you very much.
Thank you.